Now we're rolling. Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Jigna Patel, for joining us on this session of Coffee Conversations with Alumni. Dr. Patel is a three-time graduate from the University of Kentucky. She holds a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Science in Chemistry, and then went on to pursue a PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences in the College of Pharmacy. And she is currently an R&D Senior Director at GSK Consumer Healthcare, which is formerly Pfizer, where she leads a production, innovation, and development from concept through launch for over-the-counter products in Canada and Latin America. She joined Pfizer Consumer Healthcare in 2012 as a principal scientist, and since then, she has undertaken numerous roles with increasing scope and responsibilities across R&D in Pfizer Consumer Healthcare. So thank you again for joining us, and with that, I will let Rupinder take over.
All right, thank you again. We really appreciate your time.
No, thank you, and it's really good to be here. Appreciate the invite.
The first question I'd like to ask is, can you just describe your average day or week in your current role?
Sure. So I have had a number of different roles in my current role. So I started late last year in November or December. I was appointed as the senior director, and basically my team leads all product development, innovation, and development for Canada and Latin America. So one thing I could say throughout my career, each day for me at Pfizer and now at GSK has been extremely exciting and challenging. I don't think there's been a day where I've come in and said, I'm so bored today. So that's always great. I feel like I'm learning every day. Currently, we're extremely busy. We went through a joint venture last August. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it. Pfizer Consumer Healthcare and GSK went into a joint venture last August is when we officially transitioned to GSK. So it's a really exciting time, extremely busy. I'm not in the lab as much these days as I would like to be. I do miss that part of it, but I'm really excited to be building a new team from ground up. So a lot of my time has been spent on interviewing and hiring over the past few months. And as part of my role, it's also to develop our ways of working, how we're going to work with the different partners that are in the region, and collaborating with our commercial teams to build our pipeline. For me, coming from a science background, it's been really exciting to see more the business aspect of product development, and that's something that I'm learning on a day-to-day basis. And we collaborate not only with our commercial partners, but various technical functions. So they may be based in Richmond in our R&D facility, but we also work with a lot of sites locally. So I'm responsible for development when I say Latin America, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, and really working with both internal partners as well as external partners in the region. So really exciting times.
What are some projects that your new team that you're developing will be working on?
So I'm gonna answer very broadly in the sense that we are responsible for all innovations and product developments for the region. So the types of products may be different for each one of the regions, but basically, the brands that you guys may be familiar with, they have a lot of local brands that many people would not be familiar with. For example, in Canada, they have a respiratory product, Buckley's, that is very specific to Canada that we may not, you and I may not be very familiar with in the US, but brands that, my team is working on that you guys would be familiar with are Advil. We work on Advil innovations for Canada, Advil innovations for, it's huge in Latin America as well. Chapstick, something that I used to lead a product development team for US and Canada last year. And it is a brand that's quite popular in Canada as well as in Colombia. So we work on that. And then another one that you guys probably are familiar with is Tums. So Tums is maybe marketed under a different name in the region. And sometimes that's some of the things that my team will work on is taking an existing product that you may see in US, but it may be marketed under a different brand or name in another region.
And so this team that you are developing, what are some characteristics that are most desirable for people in your team?
So, what I'm going to say, what I look for is, attitude is huge. A can-do attitude, being able to learn. So in graduate school, right, you are focused. I didn't do, if I had to go back in graduate school, I did nothing related to what I do today. But I think having the right mindset and attitude takes you a long way. Learning agility, so one of the things is graduate school teaches you is really how to look at a problem and solve a problem. Gives you a very sound technical foundation, but realizing as you come into different roles in your career, to how do you adapt, right? So adapting and being able to learn. How do you leverage the knowledge that already exists in whatever company, institution you're with, or in your network, and take that knowledge to accelerate your growth and development, right? And really carry that into the organization in solving problems and challenges. So, continuous learning and development are key. But also, as I mentioned, my team and a lot of the teams that I have led, one of the things that is essential for success is a strong collaboration and teamwork across, not only internally, but we also rely heavily on our external partners for development. So how do you build that strong relationship? How are you able to motivate and influence to execute the work that is required? And also being able to navigate through that complex. And I mean, we're a big global company, so being able to navigate those relationships is key. I think one of the things that I see is also key is we are in research and development, and accepting that not everything is going to pass, or go straight forward. And so being able to think differently and being able to bring fresh ideas and perspectives, and recognizing they may not always pay out. You may learn, you may have some failures, but willing to take those calculated risks and learn from those failures is also, I think, very important.
So is your team going to be primarily PhDs or?
So, yeah, that's a great question. So I should explain my team. I have a very small team. I have two colleagues that are based in Latin America. So one person I have is currently in Colombia. I have another colleague that's going to be based in Brazil. We're recruiting for that position is still open. I have 4 other positions that are R&D positions based in Richmond. And so the other 2 positions that I mentioned, we do not have an R&D facility in the region, but these colleagues will be primarily interfacing with the colleagues in Richmond, and also they will be working with the local team and external suppliers that are based in the region. My team in Richmond, I have 4 scientists. They vary from PhD level to entry level positions, with more experience to less experience.
Okay. And what would you say has been the biggest obstacle in transitioning into this new position?
So I've only been 6, 7, 8 months into it, and I think it's really trying to build a team. And right now we're still, as I mentioned, we're still recruiting, managing the workload, but also navigating, right, and building new ways of working. So we say it's almost like you're learning to fly a plane and build it at the same time.
Did we lose her?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So sorry, I don't know where I cut off. Everybody was just frozen after a while. I'm like, okay.
It was at learning to build a plane and fly it at the same time.
Yeah, so it's just having a little bit of flexibility and adaptability. And I always tell my team to, right, just have patience. We're going to have to figure out how to navigate and figure out new ways of working.
Did you have to work across country lines in any of your previous positions, or is this the first one?
No, that's a great question. So, you know, in as a scientist, I did have, I'm trying to think back, in a couple of roles where I was working with the team in Latin America for developing products there specifically for one market, so Colombia. And so I had some experience with that in the probably two or three of my roles. I did have that experience. And I think when I look at my career, I think that did prepare me for my current role, is having some of those relationships built. It wasn't across the board, but definitely helped in being able to understand, navigate, and be able to work with different cultures. I think one of the things that you realize is we're so used to working in a certain way within the US or within, I wouldn't even say Canada is that different, but when you work with a country or culture outside, I think that's one of the things that you have to learn is, you know, how things work for them, especially when you're working remotely, right? So you're not there on a day-to-day basis, and how you navigate that culture, I think, is important at learning when you're working globally. I think these days we're all adapting, right, to the remote given the current situation. So I think in learning how to make those connections, but it definitely worked with Colombia in the past. I did not work with Brazil. And I've also worked with Canada in the past. So it was really just expanding my role in the other countries that I'm supporting these days.
So we're gonna jump all the way back. So right out of PhD, you went into academia, and you have stayed in academia since. What were some of the major tools or experiences that helped you solidify your decision to go into academia?
So let me understand your question. I've always been in industry.
Sorry, yes, industry, not academia.
I just wanted to make sure. I'm like, hold on. Let me make sure. So I have always been in industry and in pharmaceutical industry, always been in formulation development, although in different capacities. So my PhD was more in vaccine pharmaceutics. I remember when I had applied for the position in Pfizer. It was at the time in Groton, Connecticut. I joined the Pharma division straight out of grad school. It really didn't have anything to do with what I had done. It was all small molecule development, early stage development. But I learned so much. At first, I kind of questioned, because I thought, if you would have asked me, would I see myself where I'm at? No, absolutely not. But you know, I think having gone through with each role, you learn something new and you apply that in your next role. So, you know, I had my backgrounds in analytical chemistry. As I went into my PhD, that definitely came, and I applied some of those principles and built on that foundation. as I look at how I moved into the next role, right, there were still things that I learned in grad school and my PhD that I applied, but it wasn't the same. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the pharmaceutical industry is being able to collaborate globally and develop products that impact millions, of people. So on the pharmaceutical side, I worked on products that were more prescription RX. So I worked on a diabetes molecule that's currently approved, and also a cancer drug that's also approved. And it gives you such a sense of satisfaction. My dad has diabetes, so for me, it's such a satisfaction you get from knowing that people are using your products. And then when I think of that consumer, I think it's the same kind of satisfaction for me that I derive is, while these aren't life-saving drugs, millions of people use the products we're talking about, and it's global. It's on a global scale. So for me, the decision was the right decision, and I think I've learned so much from it. I think it for me, it's a perfect merger of you're still bringing in academic and learning along with real life experience in delivering solutions, healthcare solutions that help people.
What would you attribute your source of clarity to in that decision, just coming straight out of PhD?
So I think I always knew that I wanted to go into industry when I started my career. And there's a part of me that wants to teach at some point and add that. It's just finding the time. But I really enjoy having a broad base of experience and knowledge. I never saw myself as a specialist. So for me, industry was a perfect fit. And I think it was also being able to learn a little bit more about the business, which in the beginning, it was definitely, I was more on the front end in the science. I think now trying to bring more the business aspect along with the science, it's interesting to see. Am I good at it? I don't know, but I enjoy that learning about the different teams that I work with. Commercial has always been an area that I haven't worked very closely with as a scientist, but getting more exposure to in the last 3 to 4 years.
And so you didn't do a postdoc, if I'm reading this right.
Yes.
Did you notice any differences in your experiences moving up your positions versus your peers that had done postdocs?
No, and in industry, it's not really required that you do a postdoc. I think we see a lot of students that come straight out of graduate school or even with a bachelor's, master's. Can you hear me?
Yes. Maybe no.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. I am so sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
I don't know if it's the rain or I don't know if it might be better for me to connect on my phone. Would that be better? We could try this one time, and then if it cuts out, I'll try connecting on my phone.
Okay. We had left off at people coming from any stage of their degree into industry?
Yeah, so we get, I mean, I can speak both on the pharma side and now on the consumer side. I don't think a postdoc is necessary for you to be successful in your role. Like I said, for me, it's more the attitude, the learning agility, and curiosity that really I'm looking for. And I don't think that, I think for academic positions that might be different. And I'm speaking from my experience both in consumer healthcare as well as on the pharma side. That that to me that doesn't, a postdoc's not something I look for. What is, I think, helpful for graduate students that might help you
Hi, Rupinder. This is Jigna. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I decided to join on my phone. I'm not sure. I'm not having a good day on my computer.
It's all good. Thank you for persisting. Okay. The next thing I wanted to ask was, you initially started as in a variety of principal scientist positions, and then moved up to senior manager and then director. What would you say prepared you the most for transitioning into leadership roles, and how would you describe your leadership style in these roles?
So I think even in my principal scientist and throughout my career as a scientist, one of the things that I really enjoyed was mentoring the more junior scientists. I would typically have a summer student. I think that was where I left off on the last conversation, is that one of the things that I would recommend to graduate students, if you're considering, a career in industry, or even just not sure if you want to and want to experience the culture for different companies, a lot of the companies offer summer internships, and so part of as a scientist, you have the opportunity to take on students. So I typically took on summer students, so also got experience mentoring and guiding someone else's work through that. I also served as a mentor for a number of other junior scientists within the whatever groups that I was in, whether it was on the pharma side or consumer side. And then as I worked, as I continued to work more senior scientist positions, I was also given the opportunity in discussion with my manager to indirectly manage several colleagues that were on my team. So he was the direct manager, but I would manage their day-to-day activities and mentor, help develop them. So I really got a sense for managing through that, and also as a cross-functional team leader. I think you can develop those skills in when you're working across boundaries with different teams as well. While they don't directly report to you, you do need to build those relationships and help sometimes coach more junior scientists that are on project teams. So I think there are a lot of opportunities there. Another opportunity to build your leadership skills are through, we have site colleague resource groups, but I remember when I was in grad school, I was very much involved in AAPS. So I think there are a number of opportunities, or even in your community, right? There are organizations. So there are lots of opportunities if you really want to develop that leadership skill and to get that experience of, do I enjoy being more of an individual contributor, or do I enjoy managing people? So that gave me, in my role, I had those opportunities and realized that I do enjoy also helping to develop young scientists and manage teams and having broader influence as I've taken on more responsibilities.
And so in this role, in addition to the people you oversee, do you still have a lot of opportunities to mentor?
I do. So we have, both in GSK and in Pfizer, we have mentorship program where, they have a formal program, but I've also done it informally. So in Pfizer, I had done it through a formal program where we would be matched up with a scientist or someone else in the organization that was looking for a mentor. In a lot of my mentor-mentee relationships have been more informal, in terms of just someone approaching me and said, hey, would you mind mentoring me or guiding me, or someone that I've worked with, and just, I don't think a mentor relationship always has to be very formal. I think if you look, within organizations, sometimes you see that you have different people that you can learn from, and it's more just organic and within teams, or, someone you may see struggling in an area and being able to help them along their journey.
And what would you describe, or what were some key turning points and decision points that have really shaped your trajectory to be what it is now?
So, for me, it's been, just being open to possibilities. It's what I was saying earlier. When I remember when I was coming out of grad school, I had been in vaccines, so fascinating, especially in the current environment. I was like, wow, what would my, career have been like had I gone into vaccines? As I was graduating, my interest was, hey, I'm going to get a position with a vaccine company. That's where I want to be. And I remember this opportunity came open at Pfizer. To be honest, it was not a position that I was immediately interested in, but I was looking for a job. It was at the very beginning of my job search. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. In worst case, I practiced, and kind of honed my interview skills. And I actually had another interview lined up with a smaller company in DC for a vaccines position. I got the role at Pfizer, and I really thought about it because it was more small molecule. I was open to the possibility. I knew that it was a great company, and the other company I was going to interview with was much smaller, and so may have more options and within Pfizer. And I took the opportunity, knowing that, hey, you know what? If it doesn't work out, I don't like it, I can change. That's really been kind of my guiding, right? So having a career in mind, but not planning it to the very detail, being open to possibilities that come your way. So the turning point in my career was really when I was in Pfizer. as a senior scientist working on a team, there was, we call them pharmaceutical sciences team leaders. And it was really, it was more of a cross-functional team leader on projects that were in early stages of development. And I was working on one of the projects, and the pharmaceutical science team leader had left that project. So there was an opportunity that was created. There was a gap there. And I was able to get that opportunity at, typically at my level, you didn't really have a lot of team leaders at my level, but I was already on the project. I knew everything. And another pharmaceutical science team leader stepped up and said, look, I think she can do it. I will mentor her. I will step in. And it really gave me the opportunity to start developing some of the skills I was talking about in terms of cross-functional leadership, getting exposure to how, the big picture of projects and how they progress very early in my career. And also gave me starting to think about some of my building my leadership skills. And then the other area, I would never have guessed, I would have been in, joined consumer health or been in consumer health for this long. But I would say that's another key decision or turning point in my career, because it continued to provide me those opportunities. And I came to consumer healthcare because of a personal situation. And Pfizer being the global company it is, and at the time consumer healthcare was part of Pfizer, that's how I transitioned into consumer. And I honestly didn't think I was going to be in consumer for more than a year or two, and here I am 7 years later. So I think those are two big key turning points in my career. And in consumer, again, it was a very different area. I joined as a scientist, learning those, but that cross-functional team leadership that I developed on the pharma side really helped accelerate my growth in consumer. And then, being able to grow in the consumer space and get to more leadership levels definitely has helped me to where I am today. And I think, still on the journey, learning and growing. It's been great.
Can you describe some obstacles that you had transitioning into consumer health?
Yeah, great question. So, while I was on the pharma side, I was also very early in supporting molecules at drug discovery stage up to phase 2. So I had never really done any scale-up work. And actually, that's what attracted me to the role that I had applied for in consumer healthcare, because it was mostly late-stage development scale-up. And the other thing is the mindset, the consumer mindset, right? So when you're in pharma, you're working on prescription products. A doctor prescribes a product to you, and you take it, and they're life-saving drugs. On the consumer side, they help and improve people's lives. People have a choice. When you walk into a store, you have Advil, but you have generics. You have a lot of other choices of pain relief medicines that you can take. And so thinking about a product from a consumer mindset, I think that was a big kind of aha. I had never really thought about how does something taste, look, feel, because I was always on the early side. So there were two kind of things. One was from a technical side of, going from an early stage mindset where I was developing formulas for early clinical trials, preclinical trial species, to going more late stage and scale up and really registering products. And then secondly was in terms of the mindset and things you have to think about in developing these over-the-counter products, not only for US, because if you think about a US consumer is very different from a Latin American consumer. So being able to, what are the consumer gaps and needs and insights, and bringing those into your products as you're developing them.
What do you wish, what's something that you wish that someone had told you before starting or before switching into consumer health?
So are you specifically into consumer or just in my career?
Really, just anywhere. Take it as you will.
Okay. So I don't know if anything in consumer. I'm trying to think about that question. So I think in terms of, right, what would have been something that I would like to have known as I transitioned from more of a graduate school to the start of my career is really to just soak it all in and enjoy, you know, those early days. I think, you know, as you stay in a role and continue to grow, I think it gets so busy. And when I look back, I think it's just, you know, hey, just enjoy and leverage the opportunity to learn from others. There's so many SME subject matter experts and knowledgeable people around you to leverage that opportunity to meet with them and learn. And I did a little bit of that, but also seeking out mentors. And what I'm talking about seeking out mentors isn't necessarily in a formal mentor relationship, but just as you're looking to learn about different areas and accelerate your growth and learning, I think there's so many opportunities that you can leverage within a company to learn about different areas. You know, just sit down with people and find out about what they're doing, because it might open up something that you had never considered or thought about. So taking advantage of that. The other thing that I kind of touched on is, you know, while career planning is good, I think one of the things that you know, I would advise someone is to just take advantage of the opportunities that come along the way, and don't get so caught up in kind of this is the roadmap and the directionality of a corporate ladder. Think about the big picture of where you want to be and what experiences do you need to get there, because sometimes they may be lateral. I moved from pharma to consumer. It was a lateral move. It was not, you know, I got feedback from people like I would never move for a lateral position. But I can honestly say that I learned so many different things. And, you know, if you ask me which one's about, I love them both. I just learned very different things. And also sometimes I think when you're younger, you don't realize, you know, when you're uncomfortable or you're pushed outside of your comfortable zone is when you're growing the most. I think I still struggle with that. Sometimes it's like you get put into a position and knowing that it's okay that you're uncomfortable and working through that. I think that's where most of your growth will come from. So doing the same thing is really not going to grow you, but trying to push yourself and being okay with being uncomfortable. I guess one of the things from moving from, that occurred to me on your question of moving from pharma into consumer, what I wish someone would have told me. I think one of the areas I struggled with when I first moved into consumer is I had to build all new relationships. And I don't know why I didn't, it wasn't so much of a struggle in my early career as I went from graduate school into joining a new company. I think I got help. I'm trying to think why I didn't struggle as much, but I was established when I was trying to lead cross-functional teams. I think I had established myself there and built those relationships. So it was easier for me. When I transitioned from pharma into consumer, there were people I'd never worked with, and I was in a more senior position and having to lead teams. I struggled a little bit. And one of the things that I learned is taking the time again to get to know the people you're working with and building those relationships are key. And it really helps you really get things done and really helps you leverage the experts around you.
Yeah, that's been a very common theme of leveraging resources and the people around you and just making sure that you're maintaining those relationships.
Yeah, and even outside, right? I think I think even as you move from position to position, like when I think about myself, when I first came to consumer, I still had my network in pharma, and I tapped into them and leveraged them. So as you move in your career, I think it's how do you continue to grow and build your network? How do you continue to stay connected to your network and tap into your network? I think those are some of the key things as I grow and have moved in different roles. I think it's key.
How would you also describe your work-life balance and how that has evolved throughout your career?
Yeah, that's probably not a very good question for me, because I probably don't have very good work. I'll just be honest. I probably don't have the best of work-life balance, but I think it's a personal question, and each individual will have a different way. For me, it's really not a balance, but it's more of a work-life integration. And how do you work through that and navigate and make it work for you? I think if you're really passionate about a role or what you're doing, it's almost like for me specifically, it's almost just a part of you, right? And you have, at least in my role, I have the flexibility. I know what I need to get done at work, and also manage my commitments at home. I don't see it as, I'm going to turn off at this time, and I try to leave that flexibility, especially in the current COVID times where people are working from home. There's some days I need to go in the office, but, even with people that report to me, understanding that people have different needs, kids, and being able to be flexible so that, I might get an email from someone at late in the night, but they may take some time off during the day, and being able to manage that on an individual basis. So it's hard for me to answer that question, because most people will tell you I work too much. But for me, it's really about my work and life integration. And there are times like I will take a vacation and I will turn everything off and I do not answer my phone or people I don't have, right? So I think you need to figure out what works for you. And it's an individual thing. And I probably didn't have that right earlier in my career versus now later in my career, maybe it's a little bit more.
Is there anything that I should be asking you that I'm not asking you?
I don't know. What do you guys, how are you feeling about, what do you want to know? I would just like to open it up to everyone that's on the call in terms of, I know it's a challenging time for graduate students. As I think about how I've stayed connected with, and also being able to see the type of work that's going on, it's usually through conferences like APS, and given the COVID situation, how are you guys navigating? How are you dealing with things? What do you want to know? How are you growing your network and staying connected to potential employers?
Feel free to unmute yourself, everyone. I think for me, I really haven't found a way to adapt. I've been redoing my CV, making my LinkedIn profile a little better, and just trying to get kind of the small ducks in a row so that eventually when we are able to go to conferences, hopefully with that massive hope that we are able to, that things just kind of run smoother. I think conferences have honestly been one of the biggest things that most of us have been upset about, just because, yes, that's a huge networking opportunity, but it's also such a great scientific opportunity of engaging with other scientists and getting figuring out collaborations and just seeing what is the frontline work that's being done, and then being able to present our own and being able to engage in those discussions. And yes, a lot of them have been moved to virtual, but it doesn't hit the same spot. Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to ask?
Are most of the students, I'll ask a question, are most of the students interested in pursuing careers in academia, industry, or don't know, open to both?
I'd say most are open right now. We have several that will come in and they're like, I'm definitely going to academia or postdoc after this, or 100% going to industry. And then a lot of us are really unsure, especially considering the number of positions in quote unquote traditional tracks are limiting, especially in academia. We're pumping out a lot more PhDs than we really have room for in the ivory towers. So part of the reason that we kind of came up with this is to also be able to look at alternative careers, not just industry and academia that we're often exposed to, but we've had several like medical science liaison, several people that are working in the FDA, product managers for companies, just trying to get exposed to and educated about what are the opportunities that are available.
How are you guys tapping into, I know that I'm connected with the alumni group we have, but how are you tapping into the alumni, or is there anything that that we could help you with more? Like, has there been any feedback around that, or, you know, do you guys have any suggestions?
I would honestly say that our alumni have been absolutely phenomenal. And whenever I have had to reach out to our alumni, they have been incredibly responsive and they have been incredibly available to help out in whatever way we ask. I don't really have any other anything that I require of them or anything I would specifically want from our alumni group. Just know that whenever I do come up with something and I do reach out, I always get an overwhelming response.
That's great to hear.
Our COP alumni are a fantastic community, honestly, and I'm grateful that we have them.
One of the things that Katina and I were actually discussing the other day, Jigna, is having a more structured mentorship program for alumni and current students, because although Rupinder she's very comfortable with reaching out to alumni and they've always been super helpful, some students aren't as willing to cold call alumni and figure out what they do and, you know, ask for their help or just hear what they do in their job. So we have a career services director, and we're hoping to work with her to figure out what would be a better way to have more structure and match people up based on their interests.
That's great to hear. I would love to help with that. And I'm offering, right, if anyone has any questions that's on the call, apologies, I couldn't get Zoom to be working on my laptop, but, you know, feel free, you guys have my email. Feel free to reach out with any questions at all, connect on LinkedIn. It's always, you know, great. I know we were all students at once, and I know how difficult it is to approach, you know, someone you've never met and ask, but I think I would encourage you guys just like taking opportunities, right? And just thinking and exploring and leveraging different career paths or different types of roles to give you more information and ammunition as you decide where you want to start out as you graduate.
Do you have any recommendations of what we could be doing better in the current COVID and then post-COVID environment?
So I think keeping a positive mindset always helps, right? And just leveraging people that are around you. Katina knows, she's all the alumni, and if you need to connect with someone just to talk about something, whether it's your career or options, I think really just taking advantage of all the resources that you have. But I think, you know, also having a little bit of vulnerability and humility to ask for help when you need that help, whether it's from your advisor or from, you know, the director of graduate studies, is, hey, you know, I'm not really sure how to approach that. And I say that not only for you guys, but also to my team and everyone else I work with, is oftentimes people see that as a sign of weakness, but I really think it's a sign of strength, and it's okay not to know everything, and to know that, you know, hey, I need to solve this. I'm not really sure how to do it, but to leverage the people around you and being willing to seek out that information to help you navigate. I think that that's a sign of strength.
I appreciate that. Well, I don't think we have any more questions, and don't want to keep you any longer than I have needed to. You have been absolutely phenomenal, and I really do appreciate your time. Is there anything else you have for me?
No, thank you for this opportunity. Really enjoyed talking to you guys. Apologies for all the technology issues, and I look forward to hearing from you guys soon.
Definitely, you definitely will. Thank you so much.
All right, take care. Take care.
Thank you, Jigna.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.